So thank you all for joining once again. My name's Jason. I'm with a company called Minga. We are a behavior and engagement platform. Sometimes people call us a campus management platform. But at the end of the day, today we're talking a little bit from chaos to clarity. So what's happening a lot today, the fragmentation or a lot of disconnected tools and how they're being used on campus. Disconnected tools can also be things like Google Sheets or little pieces of paper that can be used for lots of things on campus, like hall passes or Tardies slips like that as well. And then looking at a unified approach. Today we're going to talk a little bit first about the behavior problem. Then we're going to talk about disconnected tools, creating disconnected schools, and a little bit about those pieces, and then look at a platform approach. At the end, we'll do a touch on a case study. So the behavior problem, let's talk a little bit about the behavior problem. So I'll say the 4 V's of the hallway: violence, vandalism, vaping, and Valentine's. Theft, skipping, tardiness, attendance in general is a behavioral challenge. It is not isolated as a truancy or an attendance issue. It's a behavioral challenge. Cheating, cell phones, obviously on campus. The interesting thing about all of this is it's been a few years since I've been at high school. This is not, sure, cell phones are different. There was no cell phones when I was at high school, but it's not like there wasn't behavior problems when I was in high school. There's always been behavior problems. Most of them are pretty similar, right? It's things like that. What's different today is how much time we're spending dealing with behavior challenges on campus. That's what's different. They're saying right now from National Department of Education is saying 20 to 25% of a teacher's day is spent on behavioral problems. 40 to 50% of administrators' days are spent on behavioral problems today. That is a huge problem. So, and underneath this, of course, here we can talk about what are the underlying challenges, why these behavioral problems are getting a little bit out of control. But at school, part of the root of this that's really important to understand on a regular basis is a sense of disconnection. Our kids don't feel like they belong to our school communities. And sometimes we isolate that or separate that from what these behavioral problems are on campus. But at the end of the day, if you're a student and you feel like you have a stronger sense of connection and community with your school, you do less dumb things. Is that this sense of disconnection, this lack of a sense of community on campus is at the root of a lot of the behavioral problems that we're facing today. There's one really, really big problem with having all these fragmented tools. Teachers don't use them. That's the problem. But in the moment, if you've got all these separate tools, what's happening from Tardies and how many times a student's going to the hallway versus when they got caught vaping, usually those 3 things will be completely siloed from each other. So that's certainly a big problem, all this data fragmentation. The overwhelming implementation, not just from, say, the technology perspective of integrating and configuring and setting up all these tools on the management side, but also from a teacher training perspective. How many teachers came into your office and said, hey, could you please roll out one more thing for us before this school year's wrapped up? Nobody, right? If they don't get a return on it, they're not going to use it. If we don't talk to them about why we're doing this on campus, they're not going to use it. And of course, if we don't have some accountability frameworks for the teachers themselves, they're not going to use it. It's the wild west of tools within the classroom. A bunch of it will be no tools, there'll be no systems or process within a classroom. This becomes actually the underlying issue from a student perspective as to why these systems don't work very well on campus. The underlying problem with all of this is that from a operational, functional, and behavioral perspective on campus, our students need fences. And even crazier, our students want fences. Fences, guidelines, and safe boundaries with which someone can operate in is a really, really important part of creating a safe environment on campus. The Wild West problem comes to this is that if it's different in every single classroom, this teacher does hallways this way, this teacher does hallways this way, there's no consistent framework for that student to live in their day-to-day life on campus. But when it comes to how we operate on campus every day, that consistency is going to provide a ton of return, a ton of value back to your student body. It also has a ton of return for the teacher. A value that when we roll out something like a hallway management system or a behavioral management system, one of the big values back to the teacher is that this is no longer something that they're spending their day thinking about. They don't think about how I operate the hallway today. The hallway just operates this way. On top of that, when you take that responsibility off of the teacher to manage all of those things, they also no longer have to argue with students around what's happening. So bringing that consistent guideline and that consistent framework that in every single classroom, it's exactly the same all the time, how this works, what behaviors are acceptable, what behaviors are not, how behaviors get tracked. Tardies is another great example of this consistency. It gives our students a framework of accountability to operate with on a day-to-day basis. At the end of the day, that framework becomes a safe environment for them to operate in. That safety is an kind of full circling again into the importance of community. Feeling safe and feeling like I belong are the two fundamental requirements for feeling like I have a sense of community. So talking about it a little bit from a platform perspective, a little bit of the Minga pitch, there's a little bit of Minga pitch in here. We obviously tout Minga as a one-stop shop, but I think most importantly what this does on campus when we bring all these pieces into one place is provide, and this is an example of a teacher view, this is what we call my class, so a teacher's view into my class, provides one simple workflow for all of this stuff for the teacher. We only have to train the teacher once. If you want to schedule a hall pass or assign a hall pass to a student, you'd simply click on Jenica's name, click the hall pass and click assign. It's 2 clicks for kind of everything that a teacher needs to do. But if they also want to assign cell phone behavior or a vaping behavior to a student as a disciplinary measure or a behavioral measure, it's exactly the same workflow. You're simply going to select a student, select guidance, the appropriate one, click assign. So all those workflows are all the same. So from a teacher perspective, we're going to greatly relax the amount of training and reduce the amount of training that we need to take those teachers through to do all these workflows over and over. From a big picture perspective, step number 1 through this process, like in looking at how we typically roll this out on campus, from a behavioral perspective, usually number 1 is we're looking to manage the behavior problems that we're having today. Catching a vaping incident or a vandalism incident or even a tardie and quickly marking that student as tardie through like a teacher or an automated workflow, updating their progressive discipline framework, issuing the lunch detention if it was their 4th tardie this semester, and automatically notifying everyone in the process would be another example of managing those guidance behaviors. So step number 1 usually is when we're coming in, we are rolling out systems to help manage the issues that we're seeing on campus today. But somewhere along the way, a lot of schools lose the opportunity of putting these behavioral points and incentive systems in place. But the prizes change, and so we have to take that into consideration. How we reward the students change, but the opportunity for the program itself is still very, very much alive for students. Kids love to get recognized. Now to be fair, so do teachers. So communicating with students, promoting events and activities, bringing in that points and reward side is all built into the platform as well. So this holistic place, really our objective and our vision is to tackle that fragmentation, that overall behavioral framework that we're delivering on campus and tying it all together into one spot. But a couple of real life examples or an example at Allen High School, when we connected with them a couple of years ago, they had 4 different platforms that they were looking to unify into one platform. They were doing hallway management with one product. They had a team and sports app to promote events and activities and do that stuff was another product. They had a behavioral system was another product. But a couple of basics. In the first year rolled out with Allen, we had a 19% reduction in tardies. So 1,200 automated detentions. But on the point side, coming back to that, what we talked about originally, that motivation, that driver, that if you get to 100 points by the end of your grade 12, you don't write finals, drives their participation in point events. through the roof, and students will like mob the administrators if they didn't get their check-in point for whatever the reason was. If they wore their school colors but they never got that check-in point, then you just see like a little sea of students following around the admins that can check them in, or the house principals that check them in. So that's a little bit of an overview for us, but I've got time for questions.